Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, thank you very much. I'll tell you, Gina and I flew in a couple days ago. I almost said a couple weeks ago. And Jim and Tammy have had us in a serious relaxation mode over the last couple days. And we've had a good time, and we've been gearing up to having this session with you this afternoon. Really looking forward to it. And a couple minutes ago, I was trying to get a handle on who we have in the room, what's going on in regards to who's the big builders in the room, who's the big recruiters in the room, who's big on sales. And we are going to cover all fundamentals this afternoon, all fundamentals. Now, I can take for granted that you're serious about the business, or you wouldn't be here for the manager session on a Friday afternoon, correct? I promise you that by the time I'm done, you'll have everything you need to go build a big organization. I promise you. Now, you're going to get a lot of stuff from us tomorrow too, but everything we're going to cover today, I mean, soup to nuts from recruiting and building. And I think what I'd like to tell you is don't try to write down every single thing that you see on the overhead. Because if you try to write down everything you see on the overhead, you're really not going to get the message. Yeah, by the way, is this thing set to go, or does this thing have to, this is where it stays? Okay, good enough. And so I really want you, what I want to do is I really want you to get it. I want you to get it. And if you try to write everything down, you're not going to get it. You can take great notes, and I've always been big on note-taking, but if you're not really hearing the message, then it doesn't mean anything. One of the things that you need to do is you need to build a company. Sales is great, but a salesman is only as good as what? They're only as good as their last sale. A salesman wakes up broke how often? Every single day. I mean, if you're good enough to go out there and make $100,000 over the next 12 months, here, let me give these, Glenn. Thanks, bud. If you're good enough to go make $100,000 over the next 12 months from selling, that's fantastic. But next year, how much you got to sell to make $100,000 again? Same thing. Gina and I have been in this business now. October 10th was 16 years licensed. And we stopped selling 13 and a half years ago. See, because we built a business. Sooner or later, you're going to get tired. You're going to get tired. Sooner or later, you're going to burn out. But see, when you build a company, you never burn out. When you hear people like Jim Meyer get up in front of the room, or people like me get up in front of the room and say, man, we're just as motivated today as we were 16 years ago. We're just as excited today as we were 16 years ago. We're not saying that because that's something people could get excited about. We're saying that because it's the truth, because we're not burnt out. Plus, there's only so much money you can make in sales. And one of the things that you're going to find out is the minute you get to $100,000, you're going to want to get to 200 real quick, because you can have a lot better quality of life at 200,000 of income than you can at 100. And I really think that pivotal point where you really start to feel like, man, life gets good is at 300,000. Now, I know a lot of you would be thrilled to get to 100 right now. Just like in my first year in this business, I thought $50,000 would be all the money in the world. I'll tell you a little bit about my story later, but I joined this business 23 years old, broke, living at home with mom and dad, so $50,000 was a lot of money to me. But once we made 50, I said, boy, 100 would be a hell of a lot better. Your level of acceptance grows, doesn't it? We're going to talk a little bit about level of acceptance tomorrow, because a lot of people really think that small is big, and one of the things that we're going to get you to understand by the time we're done tomorrow, that small is not big, small is what? Small. And see, the most important thing that you need to build in Primerica is an above-average desire to win, an above-average desire to be somebody, because you could get any speaker up in front of the room that's good at the fundamentals to teach you the fundamentals, but the fundamentals really don't mean anything unless you have the drive to go implement them, correct? And so I'm going to give you a lot of good fundamentals today, and hopefully you think I do a decent job of conveying the message and teaching the fundamentals. But ultimately, if you walk out of here and you're not really motivated, it really is meaningless. So the most important thing that you need to establish in your Primerica business is you need to establish a why. Why are you going to go out there and do what you need to do? Why are you going to go out there and do what you don't want to do? Because ultimately, the people that make the big money are the people that can push themselves to do what they don't want to do, because they're totally focused on what they could have from doing what they don't want to do, right? So you really need to get a why. You got to have a dream. You got to have an above average desire to win, an above average desire to be somebody. It's got to be like an overwhelming desire. Yesterday, Jimmy and I were talking when we were playing golf, and I said when we won our first company trip, which was Acapulco, the Princess Hotel in Acapulco in 1985. It was my first opportunity to stay in a luxury resort. First opportunity to be in a resort where you're in this magnificent pool with waterfalls and you actually swim to the bar. You don't have to get out of the pool to go to the bar. You can swim to the bar, and you got strawberries the size of golf balls, actually bigger than golf balls, and you got shrimp that are unbelievable, and you got these beautiful rooms and these beautiful views and everything like that. That trip, what happened to me in that trip was I got caught in the gravitational pull of luxury. And most people get caught in the gravitational pull of mediocrity. Did you ever hear Jimmy say, most people, the reason they don't win is because they don't know what it feels like to win? The minute you know what it feels like to win, man, oh man, you want to win. The minute you have an opportunity to go someplace nice, really live a great quality life, live in luxury, man, you want more of it. You want more of it. So let's talk about the fundamentals, but if you have not taken enough time, which I bet you, my educated guess would be most people have not taken enough time of establishing their why they're going to go out there and do the things that they don't want to do today. If you have not established your why, the most important thing you need to do when this school's over or when this evening session is over is really sit down and ask yourself, what do I want out of life? Where do I want to be a year from now? Where do I want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now? How much money do I want sitting in my investment portfolio? What type of car do I want to be driving? What type of home do I want to be living in? Do I want to have multiple homes? What do I want my life? You've got to design your life. We went to a seminar in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago, and the theme of the seminar, the name of the seminar, and Jimmy and Tammy put this on, was Life by Design. Because we are the architects of our lives. And if you know what you want out of life, then you have drive. And if you have drive, then all you need is someone to teach you what to do, right? So let's talk about it. Let's get into the first slide, Glenn. Okay, let's focus that a little bit. We're going to talk, the whole afternoon session is going to be about recruiting and prospecting. It says, why recruit? Now, I'm just giving you a couple reasons. Why recruit? Only 168 hours in a week. You need to leverage your time. It doesn't matter how committed you are, dedicated you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. You take somebody who's an expert at what they do. If they're a workaholic, maybe all they could do is work 80 hours a week, right? Because you work 80 hours a week. If you're working 80 hours a week, you need sleep. So if you slept 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week, that's 56 hours. So you just blew 80 hours plus 56 hours. You've blown the majority of your 168 hours. So you take somebody who's real competent, real dedicated, real great at what it is that they do. They work 80 hours a week. And then you take somebody who's just okay. They're average. But they hire 100 people and teach them how to work 10 hours each. They're getting 1,000 hours out of every 168-hour work week. Can you compete with that person? It's impossible. And that's 1,000 hours before they go to work. That's 1,000 hours before they start recruiting, 1,000 hours before they start selling. I mean, you can't compete with somebody that's in the recruiting business. If you want to develop, listen, I know you want to compete, just like we want to compete. There's a lot of things you want, there's a lot of things I want, but the bottom line is just talk about quality of life. If you want a quality of life, then you got to teach other people how to do what you know how to do. And that, by the way, is in any business. That's not just Primerica. If there was no such thing as Primerica, I'm sure that I would be in my own business right now. I'm not exactly sure what type of business. Years ago, I would have told you it was the engineering business, but there's a good chance that I would have never made it in that business because of what happened in the early 90s, and we would have found another business. But I guarantee you one thing, we wouldn't have tried to do it ourselves. We would have hired a lot of people and taught them how to do what we know how to do. So that's a great reason to recruit, isn't it? Second reason, a new recruit will solve any challenge you have. It truly will. If your attitude's not where it needs to be, if you're not as enthusiastic, excited, and positive as you need to be, all of a sudden when you hire one person, you got a new lease on life. All of a sudden when you hire one person, there's light at the end of the tunnel again. There's this newfound enthusiasm that may have been gone that's all of a sudden back because you know you're one recruit away from an explosion. You just had something positive happen. So if your attitude's not where you want it to be or where you need it to be, because you cannot build a good business, a great business, without a great attitude, go recruit somebody. If you have an activity challenge, well, recruits will solve any activity challenge. Look, we came into this business 23 years old. How great do you think my market was at 23? You're supposed to hire how many pointers? 5, right? I was a 0 pointer. You're supposed to be married. I was single. Own a home, living at home with my parents. Have children, no children. Making at least $30,000 a year. I was making $18,700. And what was the last one? Married 25 to 45. I was 23 years old. And most of the people I knew were just like me because birds of a feather flock together. First 10 guys I hired were just like me. Yet I was out in the field every night. Well, how'd you go out in the field every single night? Because we hired people, we got into their markets. They had married brothers and sisters, you know. They had aunts and uncles and parents that were married, owned a home, had children, make at least $30,000 a year. If you have an activity challenge, just go hire people and you've got places to go. But if you don't hire people, you never have places to go. After we were in this business, maybe 6 months, we hardly ever had to set any appointments. But we were out on appointments all the time, and the reason we hardly ever had to set any appointments is because we always had people we were training, and they were setting appointments. So go recruit somebody, and you won't have an activity challenge anymore. And an income challenge, obviously, if you're recruiting, then you're out across the kitchen table. If you're out across the kitchen table, what are you doing? You're making money. There is no excuse, and I love your theme, no excuses. There's no excuse not to make money. There really is none. It's like, well, I'm not from Florida. I moved to Florida 2 weeks ago. I don't know anybody. I don't care what it is. I mean, within 30 days, you could have this sucker up and running. All you got to do is meet a couple people. They introduce you to a couple people. You network yourself through those people. You got a great service you can market. You got a great opportunity that you can market. And you're always making money. The only way you can't make money here is either you don't work or you don't take time to get good at what you do. Because they don't pay big money to people that don't master their craft. You need to get good at what you do. And don't take what I'm about to say wrong. You can't take a damn lifetime getting good. Now, there's no I don't want to contradict myself because you could always get better. I've been here 16 years. I could always get better. But it doesn't take long to get good at explaining the F&A to somebody. I see people like, hey, when are you going to go out on your first presentation by yourself? I'm working on it. You've been working on it for 3 months. It's like we listened to a cassette tape, reviewed the chart 3 times, listened to the tape, reviewed the chart, listened to the tape, reviewed the chart, did it 3 times one night, and then we were off going out and doing it for other people. The bottom line is the only way to get good is to get out there. You going to get good at hitting a baseball watching videos? No, you got to go hit a baseball. Well, if you want to get good at a presentation, you got to go do presentations. So those challenges will be solved. Here's another reason why to recruit. Recruiting enables you to build a great quality life, which I talked about. It gives you the unlimited income, which gives you the things you want. See, it's not about the money. I've never worked for the money. We've worked for what the money can do. The money is nothing more than a tool, just like a paintbrush is to an artist, right? Okay, so money, I don't love money. It's not the money, it's what you could do. You could have the home that you really want if you have the money. You could drive the car you really want if you have the money. You could take the vacations you want if you have the money. You could put your children through the schools that they deserve to go to if you have the money. See, when you have money, and it's unfortunate, but this is the world you and I live in, you have choices. When you have money, you have options. You know how middle America looks at life insurance as a necessary evil? They do, right? Nobody likes life insurance. When was the last time you sat down and somebody was like really pumped up to talk about life insurance? When you think about life insurance, you think about your own mortality. When you think about life insurance, you think about your demise. You think about, hey, nobody likes life insurance. It's a necessary evil. It's something you need to have, right? Because in the event something happens, you want to make sure that your loved ones are taken care of. You want to make sure they're provided for. You want to make sure that your income is replaced. So nobody likes life insurance. It's just something you got to have. That's the way I look at money. I look at money as a necessary evil. You got to have it. Unless you're willing to accept mediocrity. Unless you're willing to live an average and ordinary life. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, different strokes for different folks. But one of the things you need to know is and this goes back to the first 5 minutes of my talk, what do you want? And if you don't want the nice car, the great vacations, the great houses and everything like that, then you don't have a need really to make a lot of money. But you gotta know what you want, okay? Recruiting gives you freedom. Your income is coming from your business, not what you do. We sent out a voice tell this morning from a gentleman in our organization by the name of Rocco Stigliano. Rocco's been through, and I'm giving you the abbreviated version, but he's been through some incredible adversity over the last 2 months. About 2 months ago, his mom died, which if any of you have ever lost a loved one, a mom, a dad, or something like that, it's one of the worst times you could go through in your life. His mom died, and like a week later, we were going to our F&A Roadshow. Do you remember? You had one down here, right? And we're up at our F&A Roadshow up in the Meadowlands, and Rocco and they were like 5,000 people there. And Rocco parked his car, him and two of his teammates, and we were walking across the street, and somebody hit him as a pedestrian. Just came to a stop sign, made a left, didn't look, ran right into Rocco and these two guys. And Rocco got really injured. You know, he got a concussion, a separated shoulder, like a broken rib. He herniated his L4 disc, his L5 disc. He's been laid up for basically 2 months, and now he's doing fantastic. He left me a voice tell. Last night was his first night. He was back at the opportunity meeting and everything like that. And you know what? He made 16 grand this month. He made 16 grand this month. Well, guess what? If Rocco had not built a team and Rocco's income was dependent upon what Rocco did, then this past month, maybe he would have made 1,500. And he had to make 16 grand because he's got a wife and 4 daughters. And he's only been in RVP for a year. But because he built a bit, his income's coming from his business. Now, Rocco, by the way, is a strong personal producer, but he's always personally producing, training people. That's the key. You want to be a strong personal producer, teaching other people how to do what you do while you're producing, right? But if he had not been a strong personal producer, teaching other people how to be good at what he does, and he was just producing by himself, then when all these adversities happened to him over the last 60 days, his family would be in financial devastation right now. So that's another great reason to recruit, right? Okay, you recruit so you can become what we call bulletproof. So no matter what happens in your life, you've always got income coming in. Let's go to the next slide, Glenn. So let's get started on prospecting and recruiting. As you can see, prospecting is the process of creating enough interest for someone to take a look at what you do through an opportunity meeting or a kitchen table presentation. Prospecting and recruiting are two different things. And most people don't understand that. See, recruiting, as you can see, is the process of closing someone on doing our business. Prospecting is nothing more than the process of what? Creating enough interest for them to look at it. See, what do most new people do wrong when they join this business? They throw up all over people, right? Just like I threw up all over people when I was new. I invited 16 people to my first meeting. Nobody came. I thought they were knuckleheads, boneheads, whatever names we had for them at that time. The bottom line was I was the knucklehead, I was the bonehead, because I was what? Doing the meeting over the phone. Doing the meeting face to face. When all I should have been doing was creating enough interest for them to come take a look at the meeting. So when you speak to people, you need to be very aware of your only mission is to create enough interest to get the appointment. When you speak to people that initial time, you're not there to do the appointment, you just create enough interest. Let me try to give you an example. We just had a house built, and our neighbor's finishing up their house next door, and the bulldozer, the guy who's graded all the property, dug the foundation, the bulldozer operator is just a great guy. You know how you meet people that just got fantastic personalities? Right? You have, haven't you? Okay, well, this guy's got a fantastic personality. And Gina and I, about a week and a half ago, were going up to West Point because my cousin was getting married up in West Point, New York. And I was leaving the house, and Tommy, the bulldozer operator, happened to be next door. And I just said, we shot the crap for a couple seconds. I said, you know, Tommy, I've been meaning to talk to you. I'm expanding my business right now. I'm looking to hire a couple sharp, ambitious people. I'll tell you, buddy, you got an incredible personality. I got to talk to you about my business. You be interested in making a couple grand a month part-time? Well, I'm always interested in making money. What do you do? Well, basically, I have a business that shows people how to make and save money for retirement. I don't want to get into it right now. I just want to know if the interest is there in making money. If it is, I'll get a hold of you. We'll set a time to get together, and I'll show you more. That sounds great. You know, I always keep my options open. Fantastic. That's prospecting. I didn't talk about mutual funds. I didn't talk about life insurance. I didn't talk about smart loans, whole life, term, none of that crap. What did I talk about? I was generic, right? Have a business that shows people how to make and save money for retirement. Now, I don't care if your answer is, when they say, what do you do? We do asset management. If you like that answer, use that answer. If your answer is, have a business that shows people how to make and save money for retirement, if you like that answer, use that answer. If you like the answer of, we show people how to become debt-free and financially independent, if you like that answer, use that. It's not the answer. The words are not important. Get an answer and make sure it is generic. Generic. See, I know how PFS people are. They feel obligated to explain to people. What do you do? And they feel like they've got to tell them, man. It's like, does anybody here got a full-time job? Somebody, you got a full-time job? Do you? You do? What do you do? Merchandise for your home. Okay. Did you have a job? Do you have a job? What do you do? He works for the city of Gardendale. So like when he says that, am I like waiting for more? Tell me more. You know, it's like if you're a nurse and people say, what do? You say, I'm a nurse. You don't start talking about, hey, let me tell you about this catheter I put in last night. It's unbelievable, man. Okay? You know? Before this business, I worked for an engineering company. People say, what do? I used to say, I'm an engineer. I didn't feel obligated to explain to them how a slide ruler worked. I just said, I'm an engineer. You know, somebody says to you, what do? I drive a truck. Do you feel obligated to tell them how to drive a manual transmission? So what is so hard about when people ask you what you do here, you just say, I show people how to make and save money for retirement. Why do you feel obligated to talk about whole life insurance? Or smart loans, or mutual funds? People ask you what you do, you tell them and you move on. You don't get into no explanation. You feel like you're not supposed to. As a matter of fact, as you'll see on one of the upcoming slides, you're doing them an injustice when you start dumping all over them. So prospecting is much different than recruiting, isn't it? Because the process of recruiting, now you're putting them in the business. So, see, after you've created interest, now you're going to close them on either a kitchen table appointment or you're going to close them on the opportunity meeting. Now, if it's a kitchen table appointment, and we all know we only go on kitchen tables if it's a 4 or 5 point market, right? I know nobody in here deviates from that, right? Okay? Because if you do, you're not going to win. If you go across the kitchen table, now you're going to show them everything we do, and you're going to basically recruit them into the business, aren't you? If you have them down to your office, you're going to show them everything we do through an op meeting, and now you're going to close them on the business. So there are two different things. You must understand that. Prospecting and recruiting. Prospecting is a mindset. It's a mentality. You get paid to prospect. Create interest, overcome objections, and close. You have to remember, every time you talk to people, every time you open your mouth, you want to create interest. Every time you open your mouth, create interest. When you start explaining things to people at the inappropriate time, like the scenario I just gave you a couple minutes ago, you're creating objections. Now this says create interest. It does not say create objections. It says create interest. You start talking about mutual funds and debt consolidation loans and all that other stuff, which is all great stuff, but you got to give it to them at the right time, right? When you start talking, so you're creating objections when you do that. Now, one of the things that you really like to avoid is objections, right? And you just don't realize that you're creating them. Create interest. How do you create interest? We'll talk about a bunch of different ways to create interest. There's many, many different ways to create it, but all I want to do is create interest when I speak with somebody. By the way, if you're friendship farming, which we'll talk about more, if you're friendship farming, when you're friendship farming, at least this is the way I've always done it, if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, and I friendship farm, create interest, you know, they're interested, they express that they have an interest in taking a look at my business. I never, ever, ever set an appointment right there, and I never invite them to the next meeting right there. All I do is exchange numbers. That's it. If I meet Paul Sinofsky for the first time, and I create interest in him, and he's like, yeah, that sounds good, I might be interested, everything like that, it's always like, well, now's really not the time to go over it. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know I'd be talking to somebody today about my business, but let me give you my name and number. Why don't you give me a place where I can contact you? And then I call him back 2 days later and set the time. I never talk about a meeting right there. Never talk about a meeting right there. That's just the way we've always done it, and it's been very effective for us. Now, some of you might invite them to the meeting right there, and it's effective for you. But see, I believe the greatest prospectors in the world, the people they're prospecting, they don't realize you had any intentions of talking to them. A lot of you, when you prospect somebody, that person knows that they're one of 20 people you spoke to that day. Don't ever forget, everybody has a flashing sign on their chest that says, make me feel special. It doesn't say, make me feel like a number. Make me feel special. When you prospect people, they should never be under the impression that you're one of many that they're talking to. Never. So you want to create interest, overcome objections, and close. It doesn't say overcome objections and suggest. It says overcome objections and close. You've got to become a very results-oriented person. When I speak if I'm calling somebody up on the phone, before I ever call them up, I know what I want to accomplish before I pick up that phone, Steve. I know that my mission, if I call up Steve Brooks, I know my mission. I'm calling him because I want to set an appointment. Or maybe I'm calling him because I want to invite him to the meeting. I'm not calling him to suggest. A lot of people think if they just talk about the business long enough, Steve will come back and say, hey, that sounds really good. Could I come take a look at that? Hey, man, I'm working with this great company. It's unbelievable. I'll tell you, man, we got people making money all over the place. A guy in my office made $2,000 a month. What we do is incredible. I mean, you really should take a look at it. It's really great. And they figure if they suggest enough, the person's going to say, do you do meetings? You know, do you go out on appointments and explain this? You know, listen. You don't suggest, you close. First thing you find out is whether or not they're interested. And if they're interested, if Steve expressed interest, then I say, Steve, I'd like to get together, show you what it is that what I'm doing, and let's see if there's a mutual interest. Would you happen to be available on Wednesday night or Saturday morning? That's what? Closing. And you've got to be a good closer. A good closer is someone who kind of just like nonchalantly drops it in there. You can't sound, I don't want to offend anybody, but you've all dealt with people that are really bad at selling cars, right? And they hit you with the line, hey, if I give you a price you're looking for today, is there any way you'd walk out of the showroom with this? I mean, if you're a good closer, people don't know they're being closed. If you've mastered the art of sales, people don't even know they're dealing with a professional salesperson. Because it's nonchalant. It's you just drop it in there. It's not go for the throat. It's direct, but there's a difference between direct and go for it. It's direct, but it's in a very empathetic tone of voice. It's a lot of sincerity. It's a lot of professionalism. It's low tonality. And it's just like you slip the questions in there because the way you close is through questions. And the way you overcome objections is through questions. And you can't drill somebody with questions. You can't throw questions. If somebody throws questions out at me, it turns me off. Doesn't it turn you off? Yeah. You got to drop the questions if I'm making any sense to you. Just got to fit them in there. It's like, a question doesn't necessarily have to be 4 words in a question. You can make this long statement, and then at the end of the statement say, that makes sense, doesn't it? And now you've asked a question. You've turned it into a question. I mean, you just got to get in the habit. If you haven't read Tom Hopkins' book, How to Master the Art of Selling, you need to read that book. You can't say you're serious about the people business if you're not willing to invest the time into self-improvement and listen to the proper tapes and read the proper books. And that book is a necessity. You've got to study stuff like that. So those are the three things you want to do. You want to do that every time you open your mouth. A little further down. Now it says, be a master inviter, not a master recruiter. You get people to come to a meeting by creating interest through friendship, curiosity, need, and greed. That's how you get people to come to a meeting. Friendship, we'll give you an example of each. Curiosity, need, and greed. It does not say you get people to come to a meeting through information. Friendship, curiosity, need, and greed. Information does not create interest. I know you can't see. I'm going to read what's underneath. It says, when you give people information, they believe they understand what you do, so they feel they don't need to see a meeting. And then you look at them like they're the idiot, like they're the bonehead, they're the knucklehead. It's us, it's not them. If you give people information, people are quick to jump to conclusions, aren't they? So if you give people information, they don't feel they need to see a meeting. When you give information, you are doing an injustice, I used that word before, to the person you're prospecting. Because now the person is making a decision without all the facts. I'm grateful that the person that brought me to a Primerica meeting did not tell me anything. Because if they tried to explain this business to me, they would have botched it up just like you or I would botch it up trying to explain it to somebody. And there's a good chance I wouldn't have gone. I guarantee you one thing. I guarantee you, I'm very open-minded, very money-motivated, but if the guy that recruited me ever mentioned the word insurance, I would have never gone to a meeting. If he ever talked about investing, I would not have gone to a meeting because I would have been intimidated by that stuff. You know, a lot of times people ask me what I do, and I'll say, you know, we show people how to make and save money for retirement, or sometimes I'll even say financial services, you know. But regardless, one of the things I'm always very careful of is, like I said to this guy the other day, I said, and I'm not looking for people with experience. You don't need to have any experience in what we do. I'm just looking for guys that got a desire to make money. If you got a desire to make money, I've got a comprehensive training program, so don't worry about the experience. Because a lot of people won't tell you that they're intimidated. Financial services is intimidating to most people. And it would have been intimidating to me. So you start explaining this without visual aids, you're doing an injustice. The only way this business can be explained properly is through the use of visual aids. When your prospect sees the business opportunity through a meeting, they have seen it properly, and they are also able to see the big picture and have a chance to meet people who are financially successful from the Primerica opportunity. Now, it says the only way this business can be explained is through the use of visual aids. Would you agree with that? Absolutely. How can you explain a financial needs analysis without showing it to somebody? Even the rule of 72, it's got to at least be written down on a napkin or a piece of paper or something. You could talk about it, but is it going to have any power behind it? You need visual aids. Even if you're showing somebody the concept of why cash value insurance is bad and why buy term and invested difference is the way to go. And there's only two things to consider when you buy insurance, cost and coverage. So you always separate your insurance from your savings, and you draw a T-bar. Insurance is for dying, savings is for living. You can't live and die at the same time, so you never mix both. They need to see it. They need to see it. So you really, if you haven't gotten over this yet, you need to get over this. If you think you're obligated to explain everything to people, what I want you to walk out of here this afternoon understanding is you're obligated not to. You are obligated to explain it to people at the right time, but not on that initial creating interest call or that initial creating interest face-to-face conversation. Just create interest. If you take the time to learn this stuff, I'm telling you, you will accelerate your business so much. It's unbelievable. These are the fundamentals of recruiting and building. The fundamentals are everything, aren't they? Yeah. They're everything. Now, here's some examples of prospecting through friendship. If I was talking to Glenn, I'd say, Glenn, would you do me a favor? I just got involved with the business that I'm very excited about. I respect you and Pam very much. Would you come and take a look at the business and tell me if you see the same potential that I do? Now, anybody who truly is your friend will come see the business. Now, you could use that either to set an appointment or set a time for them to come to an opportunity meeting. But as I just said, if they're really your friend, that should be fine. Glenn, would you do me a favor? Friends do friends favors, don't they? Yeah. Now, listen, I'm not naive. I understand we all go through life, and we're lucky if we have this many friends in our life. But when you get started in this business, that's who you're supposed to start with, people that you're really tight with, people that you're close with. Would you do me a favor? I respect you and Pam very much. Just got involved in the business. I'm very excited about it. The words aren't that important. Just remember the concept. I'd like you to come take a look at the business and tell me if you see the same potential that I do. What is important is the end, where it says, I'd like you to tell me if you see the same potential that I do. Never set up an appointment and never invite somebody to a meeting saying, I'd like you to come take a look at it and tell me what you think. Never, ever, ever. Because it shows no conviction or commitment or belief on your part. It says, I don't even know what I think, Glenn. He needs to know that I see a lot of what? Potential. That I feel great. I can't be like, hey, Glenn, I just got involved in this thing, and, I think it's pretty good, but I'd like you to come take a look at it and tell me what you think. He's coming to the meeting or having you come do the presentation with intentions of one thing, and that's finding everything bad about it. Wants to rip it apart. I'm Jim's friend. I'll figure out what the hell's wrong with this thing. Right? So never ask people what they think. And by the way, you shouldn't really care what people think anyway. You'll never be really successful if you're still concerned with what other people think. Anybody who's ever done anything great with their life has been criticized. Big time criticized. When Jimmy and I were in Joe Enter's bass shop, Joe always used to stand up in front of the room and say, there's never been a statue erected for a critic, but there have been many statues erected for people who've been criticized. It's true, isn't it? Man, if you know what you know, if you know what you do is right, it don't matter what other people think. I mean, probably almost every single person in this room has had somebody ridicule them, has had somebody put them down. When I joined this business, it was my uncle. He wasn't the only one, okay, but he was like the strong one. Because my uncle, me and my uncle always had a really tight relationship, and my uncle really tried to dissuade me big time from joining Primerica. Because it was a miracle that I got through college, and it really was. And I graduated college in December of 1983, and I took an entry-level job with an engineering company in March of 84, and in June of 84, I saw Primerica, so I was only working for the engineering company for 4 months, and in July of 84, I quit my engineering job and came full-time with Primerica. So my uncle was like, Jimmy, you're making a big mistake. You don't understand. I've never heard of this company, Primerica. Have you ever had somebody tell you that before? What's that supposed to mean? I've never heard of this company, Primerica, before. There's millions of companies in the United States. You know all of them but Primerica? That's supposed to have impact on me? I've never heard of this company, Primerica, before, and by the way you're explaining the business, I wasn't explaining the business to him, but by the way I understand the business and everything like that, this thing's going to saturate in a few months. And I mean, he really, the smart people in your life really discourage you, and my uncle's very smart. Very smart. We were at a family function about 6 months ago, and somebody said to my uncle, what do you do for a living? He goes, I'm retired, but I used to be a rocket scientist. He was. That's what my uncle did for a living. He was a rocket scientist. Okay, he worked on the Star Wars program. He was a weapons analyst for the United States government. So smart people have a hard time understanding how Primerica works. Because smart people think you got to do something really intellectual, really fancy, really sophisticated in order to make money, And this is too damn simple. Sit down with somebody, explain to them how their bank and insurance company and credit card company is screwing them, and show them how to get into something better, hire a bunch of people, and if you keep doing it over and over, you're going to get really big and wealthy. Too easy for them, too simple for them. So anyway, he really discouraged me. But I chose not to listen to them, just like I'm sure if somebody discouraged you, you chose, thanks, but you chose not to listen to them because you're here, right? And when you build it, they will come. They will come. In our third year in this business, Glenn, would you open this? Our third year in this business, we made $172,000. Who do you think was my biggest ally now? My biggest cheerleader? My uncle, baby. Man, I knew you could do it. This is unbelievable. This is fantastic. Let me tell you something. I love my uncle, so if he ever gets a hold of this tape or anything like that, I really want him to know I love him. Because it's amazing how some meetings get back into certain hands. It really is. It is. I promise you, the people that are criticizing you now, the people that are telling you, you can't do it, it won't work, it's too good to be true, it's going to saturate, you better be careful, you got a college education, you're wasting your time. You don't listen to them. You just do what you got to do, and I promise you, they will become your biggest cheerleader. They really will. So let's go back to this. So you get this, what I'm talking about, friendship? Okay? Glenn, I want you and Pam to take a look at it and tell me if you see the same potential. They need to know they need to know when they talk to you, regardless of what their reaction is, you're in this. This is not something you're thinking about doing. This is something you're doing. You never, ever, ever can waver whatsoever in your conviction. Your conviction must always be totally solid. And when people tell you what type of business, I already gave you the answer before. It could be the answer that's up here. We show people how to make and save money for retirement. Would Wednesday night or Saturday morning be better to come take a look? But you got to know how, like I said before, to drop the questions. It can't be robotical, Phil, like we show people how to make and save money for retirement. Would Wednesday night or Saturday morning be good? I don't do that. What do? We show people how to make and save money for retirement. That's something people really need to know about, isn't it? Yeah. Well, what I'd like to do is get together, show you what I'm doing, and we'll see if there's a mutual interest. You know, we happen to be doing a business briefing at our office this week. Would Wednesday night or Saturday morning possibly work for you? That's what I mean by dropping it. Not just being robotical of, we show people how to make and save money for retirement. Would Wednesday night or Saturday morning be good for you? Because that's what people do. They read the scripts, and it's just like verbatim. And then they wonder, how come this isn't working? You got to just ease it in there. Am I making sense to you? Yeah. I hope some of you are having a breakthrough on this, okay? Or you could say we show people how to become debt-free and financially independent. Can you tell me more? What are you going to do? You're going to say, no, come to a meeting. That's how some people handle that one. Can you tell me more? No, come to a meeting. Or I can't tell you. Sometimes even when they say, what do you do? I can't tell you, come to a meeting. I would never listen to somebody if they said that to me. People look at the question, can you tell me what you do, or can you tell me more, as an objection. That's not an objection. That means you're conversing with somebody who has something called a brain in between their two ears. Show people how to make and save money for retirement. Can you tell me more? You got to give them something. So you say, basically, we show people how large financial institutions such as banks and credit card companies are taking advantage of people. Obviously, you're already aware of that, right? Well, you know, I mean, yeah, but do you do IRAs? Do you do 401k plans? Do you do insurance? I mean, hey, we do a little bit of everything, but it's too much to go into right now. I'd need to show you some things on paper. But do you have an interest in making an extra $1,500 a month part-time? Always go back to the money. Maybe they think it's bad to talk about money. Listen, you've all been on some interviews where you've really been interviewed by some very phony people, haven't you? Okay, you go on an interview and they promise you the world, right, Dave? Oh, man, if you're dedicated, if you're a good company man, if you're a good employee, there's room all the way at the top here for you. You could move right through our man, and they tell you everything, okay? And if they gave you this unbelievable scenario about our company's great, your opportunity here is great, everything is great, and the starting salary is $12,000 a year, would you be interested? Doesn't matter how good the spiel was, if the money ain't there, you're not interested, right? Okay, because at the end of the day, you need to feed your family and you need to pay your bills. People want to know how much money they can make. And I don't see people talk about the money enough in our business. I make it clear. I mean, don't over-exaggerate the money, but then the other end of that, I can play devil's advocate. You can't over-exaggerate the money because the sky's the limit here. But you've got to talk an amount of money that they can relate to. You know, if you're talking to somebody that makes big money, you got to talk big money. If you're talking to somebody that makes an average income, you got to talk $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month part-time. But you got to talk the money. Next slide, please. Curiosity. If I could show you a chance to double your income without taking any risk, would you be willing to take a look at the possibilities that exist? Somebody's got to be pretty out there to say no. If I could show you an opportunity to double your income without taking any risk, would you be willing to take a look at the possibilities that exist? How could you not be willing to take a look at that, right? Now that should pique somebody's curiosity, shouldn't it? Shouldn't it? Need. If I know somebody for the last 8 months, all they've been talking about is, man, I can't wait to get out of this apartment, I'd love to own a home, then I'm going to use that button to recruit them. If I know somebody who's sick and tired of their car because they don't, in the morning, you know, it's 50-50 whether it's going to start, and they really want a new car, I'm going to use that to recruit them. If I know somebody who they'd love to get a new fishing boat, I'm going to use that to recruit them. Whatever their need is, I'm going to use it to recruit them. This example says, hey, Bob, if I could show you how to earn the extra money for the down payment on that home you've been telling me about, would you be interested? Whatever it is we know our friends, we know our family members, and we know what they want. Use that to recruit them. You've been telling me for the longest time that you want to get out of your apartment and into a home. If I could show you a way to do it, would you be willing to free up some time on Wednesday night? Now, in that scenario, when you're talking to a good friend and you say something as powerful as that, and they say, doing what? Then with a really good friend, you could actually come back and say, does it really matter as long as it's honest and ethical? But see, there's a time and place for everything. I'm not contradicting what I taught you before. You got to go with the flow, right? Greed. Hey, Glenn, would you be interested in earning an extra $1,000 to $1,500 a month part-time? That's pressing the greed button. An extra $1,000 to $1,500 a month part-time. If I'm talking to somebody who makes $100,000 a year or $150,000 a year, I'm going to talk to them about would they be interested in the possibilities of doubling their income without taking any risks. Next slide. Remember, you create interest and control conversations by being the person who's asking the questions. And that gives you common responses. It sounds too good to be true. If I could prove to you that it is true, would you be interested? You know what most people's response is to it sounds too good to be true? I swear it is true, man. This thing is unbelievable. We got this guy, Jim Meyer. We were just at such and such place. I mean, you should see this guy. He's been... Statements push, you got to remember, when you make statements, you push people away. When you ask questions, you pull them in. When you make statements, you push them away. When you ask questions, you pull them in. Because that's most people's response to it's good to be true. You don't understand this friggin' thing. It's unbelievable. They publish a book, and they just start. And, you know, and everything you're saying really is right. It's true. And it really does sound good. Ain't going to get them, though. You got to look at recruiting like fishing. Let me ask you something. Do you push the hook into the fish's mouth? No, you pull it. You pull it. Recruiting's no different than fishing. If you've ever freshwater fished, you know, and you use a lure, you throw it out there, you reel it in, stop for a second, reel it in, stop for a second. What are you trying to do? Create interest with the fish, right? And bang. That's the way you recruit. That's the way you recruit. You create a little interest. You create a little interest. You got to pull them in. You got to pull them in. You pull them in with questions. You don't pull them with statements. You're pushing them away with statements. Sounds too good to be true. Hey, if I could prove to you that is true, would you be interested? Is this one of those pyramid schemes? Now, there's a lot of ways to answer that. This one says absolutely not. And as long as I could prove that to you, would have an interest in earning an extra $1,000 to $1,500 a month part-time. That's a simple answer. Yeah, flat out, Paul says, is this one of those pyramid schemes? Absolutely not. And as long as I could prove that to you, would you be interested in earning an extra $1,000 a month part-time? That's it. I mean, you don't have to do nothing fancy. You don't have to say, hey, give me a piece of paper and draw out the hierarchical tree with the company they work with. Now, if you want to do it that way, that's fine. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Excuse me, Cammie, I know she's into her cat, okay? But you could say, do you have different levels of management where you work? Yes, and there's one level. You could do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. I could also say, if Paul says this is one of those pyramid schemes, I could come back and say, Paul, you are aware of the fact that pyramids are illegal, right? Are you insinuating that I would do something illegal? Remember, when in communication, when it's face-to-face, it's always got to be eyeball-to-eyeball contact. People don't trust people that don't look at them. It's got to be eyeball-to-eyeball contact. So these are just samples. There's more than one way to do it. I already know about your business. Now, 99.9% of all the people that tell you they already know about our business knows nothing. Now, you can't come across arrogant like that, but I'm here to tell you they know nothing. People get like all flustered. You do? They don't know nothing. They were in a cocktail bar one night. Some guy who came to a meeting who didn't understand a damn thing was explaining to everybody in the place. They don't know nothing, okay? Just because somebody's heard of our company doesn't mean they understand our company. Everybody's heard of IBM. Does everybody understand the inner workings of IBM? No, but everybody's heard of them. Because I could care less if everybody in the world heard of Primerica. It doesn't mean they understand Primerica. It doesn't mean they know. So when somebody says to you, I already know about your business, very politely, very nonchalantly, have you ever gone to a meeting? Wait for an answer, and almost every time they'll say what? No, as you can see up here. You're not the type of person that makes a decision without all the facts, are you? No. Would you come take a look, get all the facts, and then make a decision? That's all. I mean, don't get flustered. You know, I guess what I want to tell you is don't get all wigged out when people ask you questions. People with brains ask questions. Questions are not objections. As a matter of fact, here's the definition of an objection. If you don't know if you can't get up, if you cannot get up in front of the room and give everybody the definition of an objection, then you need to write this down. An objection is nothing more than a question in somebody's mind which has not been answered. That's all it is. An objection is nothing more than a question in somebody's mind that has not been answered. So there really is no such thing as an objection, is there? If you think about it, there's not. It's just a question in somebody's mind that has not been answered. And if you understand that that's what an objection truly is, then you won't get all flustered when people ask you questions. You won't be like, oh man, they're resisting me, they're giving me objections. You know? No, they're not. They're conversing with you. They have brains. They're human beings, you know? Next one. Prospect. The most successful people are the ones who bring people to the meetings and build a big team. Recruiting is a mindset. It's an all-the-time thing. Focus on recruiting, and success will follow. Hopefully, up to this point, we've gotten that message across. Hey, listen, if you focus on sales, the average sale, if you're doing the total solution, is worth anywhere between $800 and $2,000 to you, right? If you focus on recruiting and building, you'll build RVPs, and the average RVP is worth $50,000 a year to you, every year, forever. So what are you going to focus on? Both of them require effort. Both of them require work. So if they both require effort and work, you might as well put your focus on the one that's going to give you the biggest payoff, right? Absolutely. Now this, I really want to hammer what you see. This slide I definitely want you to write down. Prioritize your prospecting activity to maximize your ratio of success. Prioritize your prospecting activity to maximize your ratio of success. So it says the first place that you should prospect is in your warm market, right? The only time somebody would not want to prospect in their own market is because they really don't understand what we're all about. And that doesn't make them bad people. That just means we have to get them to understand what we're all about. We really, you know, if I ever get, I mean, I've had people say, man, I'm just a lot more comfortable talking to strangers. I'd rather talk to strangers. I mean, some of you have heard that too, right? They are absolutely telling you they don't understand what we do. They didn't use those words, but they're telling you, I do not understand what you do. Because if somebody understands what we do, They're prospecting in their warm market. Listen, we do two things at Primerica. We show people how to make money, and we show people how to save money. Those are the two things that we do. And when somebody says, man, I'd rather talk to strangers, they don't understand what we do, and they think, man, we're going to sit down and we're going to sell their brother something, or we're going to sell their cousin something, or we're going to make them look bad in front of their best friend or something like that. And that's not what we're all about, is it? Have you ever had somebody resist you after you developed their top 25 and you tried to get them to set appointments? They just totally resisted you? Well, one of the ways to avoid that is as follows. If I sat down with Paul and I developed his top 25, after I developed his top 25, I would explain to him what we want to accomplish with these people. I'd say, Paul, first of all, I want to make something really clear to you. I don't ever want you to concern yourself with introducing me to one of your friends or family members. I don't ever want you to have a concern that I would ever jeopardize your reputation with them. You don't have to worry about me sitting down with your best friend or your uncle or your brother and trying to shove something down their throat, trying to sell them something. I would never, ever do that. Your reputation is everything to me. My reputation is everything to me. And my company's reputation is everything. When you introduce me to the people that you know, I want you to know there's three things I want to accomplish in the following order. Number one is I want to develop a center of influence for you. I want to explain to them who Primerica is. I want to explain to them what we're doing so that they feel good about the business you're in, great about our company, and if they ever come across the type of person we're looking for, or if they ever come across the type of person that could benefit from our service, because they feel good about you and the company, they're going to refer them to you. That's the number one thing I want to accomplish when you introduce me to your friends and family. Secondly, I'm going to talk to them about our expansion. I'm going to talk to them about the opportunity to make an extra $1,000, $2,000 a month part-time, and I'm going to try to hire them into your business, not my business, into your business, onto your team. And last but not least, if they feel they could benefit from what we do, we'll do a financial needs analysis for them. So don't you ever concern yourself about me putting you in a jeopardizing situation with friends and family, because I would never embarrass you. I promise you. All I'm going to do is help you build your business. Now, if you said that to people that you worked with, you think they'd cooperate a little more? You're damn right they'd cooperate. I can't tell you how many times people said, man, I mean, it was like pulling teeth developing a top 20 for Mary. Or I had no problem developing a top 25 with Joe, but getting them to set appointments was so tough. It's because they think you're going to sell their friends. They think you're going to put them, you're going to jeopardize their reputation. Jim, I wish you said that slower so I can memorize the words. The words aren't important. They just need to know. What are the three things you want to do? Number one, develop a center of influence. Number two, hire them into Paul's business. And number three, if they could benefit from what we do, fantastic, we'll do a financial needs analysis. Now, you know darn well almost every single person they take you to, if they're in the right market, is going to want a financial needs analysis, right? But if you I genuinely want to hire this guy into Paul's business, and I genuinely do care about his reputation. Reputation is everything. Listen, Art Williams always told us, he goes, listen, if you do the right thing, it's going to pay off tenfold for you. Your reputation, if you do the right thing, your reputation is just going to make you a tremendous amount of income and build you a tremendous business. If you do the wrong thing, sooner or later people are going to find out. Sooner or later they're going to smell you out. You can smell a phony how far away? A mile away. This morning I'm checking in with one of my RVPs, and we were talking, and he said, "Oh man, I got to tell you about that 401k presentation I went on yesterday. Jimmy, it was unbelievable." They went in to do a 401k presentation for a company, but they had to present it to the union delegates first, because if the union's for it, great. If they're not, forget about it. So he goes in there, he goes, I tell him the name of the company, and the guy goes, "Primerica?" He goes, "You know Jim Meyer?" And my guy goes, yeah, I know Jim Meyer. He goes, I used to work with Jim Meyer and Jim Penn back in 1984. What a great company. What an unbelievable company. I didn't have time. It was just a bad time in my life, so I couldn't pursue it at the time. But man, I can't believe you know those guys. I can't believe you work with that company. Come on in. And he opened doors for him yesterday like you can't believe. He had people sit down and set appointments with him in there like you can't believe, because that when he was around the Primerica environment and he was around the Primerica people, we did the right thing. Your reputation is everything. So you're talking about us reaping the rewards off of doing the right thing 16 years later. 1984 the guy was with us. 1984. And you know as well as I do, there's a good chance now the timing is right in his life and he'll come back, right? I've seen tons of people do it. So, warm market. Why warm market? Your highest ratio of success is in the warm market. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about it's a numbers game. If you've been here 2 weeks, you've heard that. It's a numbers game. Jim Penn believes it's a numbers game. And I have accepted it's a numbers game. Just like the Mike Rotens of the world, the Jim Myers of the world, the Paul Sinoskis, the Dave Barefoots. There's a lot of people in this room that have accepted that it's a numbers game. But just because I've accepted it's a numbers game doesn't mean I'm still not interested in getting the highest ratio of success possible. And I know that if I prospect, first and foremost, in my warm market, highest ratio of success. I know that if I call 10 people in my warm market, I'm going to get better results, and by the way, I'm not exaggerating, than somebody who calls 250 people in the cold market. I could get better results calling 10 people in the warm market than somebody who calls 250 people, maybe 500, Herb, in the cold market. Now, I'm not telling you to recruit. I'm not telling you not to cold recruit. But I am telling you that's what? Last on your list. That's last on your list. Warm market. What's the definition of warm market? Anybody who knows you and you know them. That's the definition of warm market or a natural market. Anybody who knows you and you know them. I didn't say anybody who knows you well